Before the start of the Second World War, the Germans knew that, at some point, they would have to deal with enemy bunkers and fortified positions. Normally, anti-tank guns and most artillery pieces were not well suited for taking these out. Luckily for the Germans, they had the mighty 8.8 cm or 3.46 inch anti-aircraft gun in service, which proved effective at taking out ground targets during the Spanish Civil War. Based on this experience, the German army came up with the idea of modifying some 88s for use against enemy bunkers. A small production run would be carried out, and they would see service during the German invasion of the West in 1940. While searching for a new anti-aircraft gun, German army officials contacted Krupp to develop such a design. By the end of September 1932, Krupp delivered 2 gun prototypes that were to be used for testing. After a series of firing and driving trials, the guns proved to be more than satisfying and were adopted for service in 1933 under the name 8.8 cm Flugabwehrkanone 18, or more simply, Flak 18. Despite today's fame as an excellent anti-tank weapon during the war, the 8.8 cm Flak was not originally intended to fulfill this role. In 1935, when the German army was making a list of all available anti-tank weapons, the 8.8 cm gun was not mentioned. 2 years later, armour-piercing rounds for the 2 cm, or 0.78 inch, and 3.7 cm, or 1.45 inch, anti-aircraft guns were included in the anti-aircraft development programme. The 8.8 cm calibre was, once again, not included. The Germans did not initially consider the 8.8 cm Flak to be a viable anti-tank weapon due to its sheer size, making it difficult to move and conceal. The only German anti-tank gun that was in service was the 3.7 cm Pak 36, which could be easily moved by only a few crewmen, was a small target, and had sufficient firepower to deal with most tanks of that era. When the war in Spain broke out in 1936, the Germans responded to Francisco Franco's call for aid. They dispatched both ground and air forces to Spain, including a small number of the 8.8 cm Flak guns. As the nationalists gained the upper hand in the air, the 8.8 cm guns were employed for the destruction of ground targets, where their firepower showed that they had great potential in this role. Even before the Spanish War ended, the Heereswaffenamt, the German Army Weapons Agency, requested that the Flak 18 be adapted for use against ground targets. The primary mission of these guns would be to destroy enemy fortified positions, such as bunkers, but also tanks if any came into range, sacrificing the anti-aircraft capabilities in the process. Mobility was a major factor, as the gun had to be quickly positioned to take action against enemy ground targets. 2 proposals would be adopted. The first would involve placing the gun on a half-track chassis. The second variant was more orthodox in design, consisting of an armoured half-track prime mover and a modified 8.8 cm Flak 18 gun. In this configuration, the gun designation would be changed to 8.8 cm BuFlak, or bunker flak, sometimes referred to as Bunkerknacker, or bunker destroyer. Increasing the 8.8 cm Flak gun's mobility was achieved by firing the gun while still connected to its 2-wheeled bogies. This way, the crew would not need to waste time lowering the gun and removing the bogies. A new shield was added to the gun for crew protection, although this protection would be minimal. The towing vehicle would be armoured as well. The vehicle chosen for this conversion was the SD KFZ-7, becoming the Gepanzerter 8-ton Zugkraftwagen. In order to implement this urgent project, Rheinmetall was contacted in August of 1938. The engineers worked hard, completing the wooden mock-up by the 19th of August. Only a week later, the first prototype was completed and tested at Kummersdorf. By the end of September, 33 to 50 such modified guns were built. The precise number of modified towing vehicles is unclear, but it is believed that at least 25 were built. As this gun was specialised in taking out ground targets, a number of modifications were needed. Most components, such as the gun barrel, gun recuperator, recoil cylinders, and semi-automatic horizontal sliding breech block remain unchanged. The modified flak guns received new telescopic sights positioned some 71 centimeters, or 27.9 inches to the right, and 20 centimeters, or 7.9 inches below the gun. The gunner had to take this offset into account during firing, placing the crosshairs slightly to the right and below the target. The Flak 18 had two hand wheels, one responsible for elevation and one for traverse, located on the right side of the gun. This meant that two crew members were needed to fully control the movement when tracking targets. The Bunkerknacker was intended to be solely used for ground operations and had to have modified controls. The two separate hand wheels were replaced with a single operating unit that contained both of these controls, placed on the forward right side. Essentially, this meant that only one crew member, the gunner, was needed to fully engage targets. The elevation was limited from -4 degrees to +15 degrees. Despite its maximum range of 15.2 kilometers or 17,060 feet, the modified flak guns were meant to engage enemy bunkers and positions at ranges of less than 1 kilometer or 3,280 feet. The crew manual for this weapon notes that the best and most stable firing position was when the gun was facing forward or to the rear. When fired to the side, great care had to be taken so that the carriage could absorb the firing recoil. Given its size, the gun used a large cross-shaped platform. It consisted of the central part, where the base for the mount was located, along with 4 outriggers. The front and the rear outriggers were fixed to the central base. The side outriggers were shorter in contrast to those originally used on the flak gun. Due to retaining the bogies during firing, the height of the gun was significantly raised from the ground. The two-wheel bogies were designated as Sonderanhänger 201. In order for the loader to be able to load a new round, a metal platform was welded on his side to stand on. It also received a slightly modified and angled armor shield. To the right, there was a hatch that the gunner used to spot enemy targets, while the standard 88 shield had a small opening on top for the gun to elevate through. The new shield had it covered with a plate. The modified flak gun was meant to fire high explosive and anti-tank rounds. Using an armor-piercing round at a 70-degree angle, it could penetrate 1 meter or 3.28 feet of concrete at a 1 kilometer distance. The crew of the gun included a commander, loader, gunner, and 4 additional gun assistants. The primary towing vehicle for the 8.8 cm flak guns was the SD KFZ-7 half-track. As the 8.8 cm guns were to be used for destroying enemy fortified positions at relatively close ranges, a soft-skin towing vehicle was deemed undesirable for this task. For this reason, small numbers of the SD KFZ-7 were modified, receiving an armoured body to protect the engine, crew, and ammunition. The crew of this vehicle consisted of only the driver, who was positioned on the front left side of the driver compartment. The armoured body of this vehicle resembles that used on the SD KFZ-251 armoured half-track, as it was well angled and covered the whole length of the rear compartment. It was, however, open-topped, and the armour plates were only 15mm or 0.19 inches thick. The gun crew was seated behind the driver in the enclosed crew compartment, and to the rear of the vehicle, the box-shaped armoured ammunition storage was located, containing 24 spare rounds of ammunition. By the order of the Oberkommando des Heeres, the German High Command, the training of the first crews was to commence at the Jüterbog Artillery School in September of 1938. Normally, these weapons were intended to be attached to heavy motorized artillery or anti-tank battalions, but they would be under the command of an infantry regiment. Prior to engagement, the commander, along with 2 assistants, would go ahead to observe its target, find the best firing position and the best way to retreat if needed. Once the location was found, the gun was moved to that position. Despite the 8.8 cm gun's good firing range, targets were to be engaged at less than 1 kilometer. In addition, due to its somewhat limited elevation, great care had to be taken by the crews to choose good firing positions. Given that the crew had to come rather close to the target, hiding and camouflaging the gun was seen as essential. Because of its sheer size, this would be a difficult task to undertake in close proximity to the target, so smoke screens were meant to be used while the gun was preparing to fire. Since the target hit rate was expected to be around 30%, shooting at longer ranges had to be avoided. If enemy tanks came into range, these were also to be targeted. Some 11 vehicles were attached to the 525th, 560th and 605th Schwer Panzerjäger Abteilung, or heavy anti-tank battalions, each. The first combat use of these vehicles and guns was during the occupation of the Sudetenland in 1938. This operation was peaceful and the BuFlaks did not have to fire in anger. While its self-propelled cousins saw service in Poland, the use of this vehicle and the 8.8 cm BuFlak in this campaign is not recorded, which likely suggests that it was never employed there. The three heavy anti-tank battalions would see service during the German Western Campaign of 1940. During this operation, they were attached to various units depending on the combat needs. Unfortunately, their overall performance and usage are rather poorly documented. The 525th Heavy Anti-Tank Battalion first saw action while helping clear Allied road barricades at Trois Ponts in Belgium on 10th of May 1940. The following day, it provided its firepower to the 49th Infantry Regiment, which was attacking a bunker. After firing several rounds, the bunker crew surrendered. On the 19th of May, while driving toward Dinant, two vehicles from the battalion ran into an enemy ambush and were hit by a machine gun and anti-tank fire. One armoured SD KFZ-7 was hit by an anti-tank round and was set on fire. The fire would expand to its ammunition storage, igniting it and causing an explosion. The second vehicle was hit with machine gun fire. Its crew abandoned the gun and used the armoured towing vehicle to retreat. An hour later, they returned to recover the damaged gun. It would be repaired that evening and the unit advanced towards Clairefontaine. The following day, another vehicle arrived to support the attack of the 49th Infantry Regiment at the Allied-held Assevant. Elements of the 525th Heavy Anti-Tank Battalion participated in this engagement with two guns. One gun was positioned to protect the infantry against enemy armour, which had been spotted, while the second vehicle advanced. The crew noticed the friendly infantry was retreating under fire from enemy B-1 bis tanks. One was engaged at a distance of 300 metres and destroyed. The second vehicle was hiding behind a wooden hut, and as it emerged to target the 8.8 cm gun, it was hit, exploding in the process. Seeing the two tanks destroyed, the German infantry made a counterattack. These guns were also used to support the 51st Infantry Regiment advancing towards Dunkirk during May 1940. Following the successful conclusion of the Western Campaign, these modified guns and vehicles were removed from service. The three heavy anti-tank battalions were instead re-equipped with ordinary towed 3.7 cm anti-tank guns. Why this was done is unfortunately unknown, as the order for the reorganisation of these units did not include an explanation. Other units, which operated normal 8.8 cm flak guns, were more than satisfied with their overall performance. The fate of the guns and towing vehicles is unknown, and it is likely those that survived were converted back to their original configurations. This concludes our look at the modified 8.8 cm gun and its special towing half-track. What do you think of the modified guns and vehicle? Were they removed from service for being too specialised? Or was there another problem with them? Let us know in the comments. If you haven't already, consider becoming a subscriber so you don't miss a single video. If you want to contribute more directly, consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. The money comes back to you in the form of bigger and better videos. Until next time, keep us in your sights.